I'm just taking some time out from my work here to practice my tuba for the Big Harbor Band. You know, I was practicing my tuba yesterday when someone came in here and said, "You should be on the radio." Well, I said, "Why's that?" And they said, "So we can turn you off." Ha, 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 ha. Oh, no, they laughed and laughed about that. Thought it was hilarious. But you know, I was kind of upset. Now, I know they were just trying to make a joke, but, well, it seemed like they were laughing at me. And that didn't feel very good at all. Theodore knows just how that feels. Yeah. It happened the time he tried to make a funny joke. Oh, he wasn't teasing me about my tuba playing. He was... Maybe I should start from the beginning. It was a beautiful, clear morning. The air tingled with the freshness of another summer day. And even though it was still early, the sun had already been up for a long time, making everything bright and shiny and hot. All the tugs were gathered at the Great Ocean Dock for the morning work meeting. The dispatcher gave Hank, Fodok, and Emily their jobs for the day. And then he turned to George. "You'll be towing the garbage barge today, George," said the dispatcher. "You'll take him to the Navy Yard this afternoon." Theodore guessed by the grumpy look on George's face that George wasn't too happy about getting the job. "Theodore," the dispatcher continued, "please go over to Rebecca, the research vessel, right away. I need you to tell her that her bell isn't working." "Her bell, sir?" Theodore asked, afraid that he must have missed something while he was thinking about George. "Yes, please tell her that her bell isn't working." "On my way," called Theodore. Theodore was on his way toward Rebecca's dock. It was even hotter now, and he didn't feel like rushing. Instead, he just motored along slowly, enjoying the warm summer breeze. Philip and Fillmore, the ferry twins, were about to meet in the middle of the harbor. Theodore liked saying hello to the twins because they always had a little joke that they liked to do with each other. "Hi, Philip," he said to one side. "Hi, Fillmore," he said to the other side. "I'm Fillmore," replied the ferry on the first side. "And I'm Philip," said the ferry on the other side. You see, the ferry twins look exactly the same, and they liked to get the tugs mixed up about their name. Whenever Theodore called one of their names, they'd always say it was the other, just for fun. Then they'd all have a good laugh at their little joke. "We bet you can't guess our names," called Fillmore. "Next time," finished Philip with a toot. "There's nothing like a good laugh," Theodore chuckled to himself. Theodore was about to pass under Benjamin Bridge when he smelled the most awful smell he'd ever smelled. He turned off his engine and stopped. The smell seemed to be coming from over where Rebecca was docked. Theodore looked and looked, and then he could see that Rebecca's deck was filled with something dark. It seemed to be steaming in the hot sun. Could that stuff be what's causing this terrible smell, he wondered? Theodore didn't want to get any closer to that smell, so he called out to her in a loud voice. "The dispatcher said to tell you that your smell is broken. Your bell is broken." Well, first, Benjamin Bridge started chuckling. And then Philip and Fillmore hooted with laughter. Theodore turned and wondered why everyone was laughing. Then he realized he had said that her smell was broken instead of saying that her bell was broken. He'd made a joke. "It's from this seaweed on my deck," called Rebecca, sounding a little bothered. "I pulled it up from the ocean on my latest research trip." But all Theodore could think about was how good it had felt to make the others laugh. He thought and thought about another joke. "That's a smelly belly!" he called out, hoping everyone could hear him. Then he looked to see if Philip or Fillmore found that funny. But this time he saw that they weren't laughing. Well, maybe they couldn't hear me, Theodore thought. Rebecca is a wrecker! He tried again, and this time he tried a little louder. But the fairy twins didn't even smile a little smile. They just kept going on their way. Even Benjamin Bridge looked away, like he hadn't heard Theodore. I wonder why they weren't laughing, thought Theodore, and he turned to go back to his dock. All the way back to his dock, Theodore kept thinking about how good it felt when he had made Benjamin Bridge and the fairy twins laugh. He couldn't wait to try his joke on Hank. When I went to tell Rebecca that her bell was broken, I made a mistake and said her smell was broken, he said. Hank laughed and laughed. And then I said, Rebecca is a wrecker, Theodore continued. But this time, Hank just looked puzzled. George and Emily only looked at each other and were silent for what seemed like a long time. Theodore wondered why they weren't laughing. Well, how do you think that makes Rebecca feel? Asked Emily finally. Well, what do you mean? Theodore asked. She only has seaweed on her deck because she has to. It's part of her job, Emily said. And on a hot day like today, she probably doesn't like how it gets smelly either. Theodore got a sinking feeling in his hull. It was as though he had done something wrong. He began to wish he hadn't made any jokes at all. I have a change in the jobs for this afternoon, called the dispatcher suddenly. The tugs all listened closely. A large ship has arrived early, he said. George, you'll bring her in. Theodore, you will take over George's job and tow the garbage barge. That is all. Now, Theodore usually loved to move barges, but this barge would be loaded with garbage. And on a day as warm as this, it was probably smelly garbage. He wasn't sure if he liked this change of jobs. Theodore noticed that George was smiling at him in a funny way. Was he laughing at him because he'd have to move the smelly garbage? As he neared the garbage barge, Theodore slowed so that he was almost stopped. The smell was so bad that Theodore's nose hurt. Let's get a move on, called the barge, whose name was Guysborough. Coming, replied Theodore. He took a deep breath and moved forward. It must be awful to have all this smelly garbage on you all the time, Theodore said as he buttoned onto the barge. Look, it's my job to carry this garbage, and it's your job to tow me, said Guysborough. The sooner we get this unloaded, the sooner we'll both be away from this awful smell. Great, said Theodore to himself. This isn't only a smelly garbage barge, it's a grumpy garbage barge. As the two passed the great ocean dock, Theodore noticed that Hank was calling to him. Hi, Smelly Billy, said Hank, and he kept laughing and laughing. It's not funny, Hank, he called back to the dock. You see, Hank's laughing bothered Theodore. Well, this smelly garbage isn't funny at all, Theodore thought to himself. Guysborough didn't say anything. By now, Theodore was getting closer to the fairy twins, so as usual he called out, Hi, Philip! Hi, Fillmore! But instead of their normal little joke, they called back, Have you checked to see that your smell or bell is working? Philip added. The twins laughed and laughed. But Theodore didn't laugh. It seemed like everyone was making fun of him. He was so upset that he slowed to a stop. At that moment, he wished he could be all alone and cry. Then he looked over and could see Rebecca. She wasn't laughing either. Now I know what she felt like when I made jokes about her seaweed being smelly, thought Theodore sadly. I'm waiting, said Guysborough, who was anxious to get to the dock. Well, Theodore knew he had a job to do, and he had to get it done, stinky smell or no stinky smell. A while after Theodore had finished his job with Guysborough the garbage barge, he floated over to see Rebecca at her dock. Rebecca, he said slowly, I'm really sorry I teased you about the smelly seaweed you had on your deck. At first, Theodore thought that Rebecca wasn't going to say anything. I was just trying to make everyone laugh, Theodore continued. But now, I know it wasn't very funny for you. It wasn't your idea to have that stinky seaweed on your deck. No, it wasn't, said Rebecca quietly. Rebecca, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, said Theodore. Well, it did hurt a little, Theodore, said Rebecca. But then I decided you were only being silly. That's right, I was, said Theodore. Thank you for apologizing, Theodore, Rebecca said. I feel much better now. So do I, said Theodore. And then she added, especially since you and I don't have those awful smells around anymore. Well, they both could have a good laugh about that. You and I will have lots to laugh about another day, said Rebecca. Goodbye, Theodore. Theodore turned slowly for home. He drifted along quietly, enjoying the warm summer breeze. He could see Philip and Fillmore up ahead. Hi, Philip. Hi, Fillmore, he called.
But I'm Fillmore,
said one.
I'm Philip,
called the other. And they all had a laugh together at their favorite little joke. Now Theodore was feeling much better. There's nothing like a good laugh, Theodore thought to himself. As long as everyone's laughing together. And off he went, chuckling all the way home. You know, sometimes I can't tell those fairy twins apart either. But we always have a good laugh together about their little joke. Yeah, well, I gotta get back and practice that new song on my tuba here. Thanks for visiting in the big harbor. We'll see you all again next time. So long. How did that go? That's the Tugs. You think they're making fun of my tuba playing? Oh, no. Oh, I get it. They're helping me with my new song.